Hey everybody, welcome once again to another charity roundtable. I am Chris and I am going to be your moderator for tonight as I'm joined by some fantastic people here to talk about TTRPGs and running the game. Before we get into intros for everyone, I wanted to remind all of our audience that we are raising donations tonight for Extra Life and Sick Kids Children's Hospitals. You can hit Command Donate in chat and donate in $5 increments to be entered into draws for fantastic prizes we'll be giving away today, ranging from Infinitokens prize packs through to dice sets as well. You can see we've already hit $175 in donations for the night. If we get up above $225, we're going to be adding in some Dungeon Masters guides as well to make sure you can run the game at home too. If you have any questions for our assembled panel here, you can use the channel points redemption, ask a question, to highlight your question in chat, because we will be doing Q&A towards the end of the night. Make sure to use that liberally. We do like our questions here at our round tables. All right. Now, with that being said, I am very excited to introduce our panel today. We've got an incredible crew. I've been buzzed for this for weeks now. So without further ado, I want to send it around for everybody to introduce themselves. So first, Kathleen, why don't we start with you? Who are you? Where can we find you? And what game are you playing right now?
I'm Kathleen. You can find me at Loading Ready Run. That's on Twitch and on YouTube at LRRMTG for Magic the Gathering stuff, and just Loading Ready Run for weird stuff that we do as well. Also on Blue Sky. Just look for Kathleen LRR. I'm kind of a magic generalist, we'll say, but I'm a big Vorthos, so I have lots of opinions about story and flavor text. I am currently playing Zero games because I am writing a book and I have no time to do anything else. So, but I'm sure I will have lots of fun playing games again. I have not even touched Metaphor Refantasio, and if you know me, you know that's how sick I am.
Amazing. Well, Kathleen, welcome to the round table. Excited to hear more from you. Michelle, welcome back. Not your first round table here. I'd love to see a veteran with us. Why don't you let everybody know who you are, where we can find you, and what game you're playing right now?
Let's see. Hi, I'm Michelle Rapp. You might know me from the internet as a person who does a lot of ortho stuff. Had a podcast at one point. Ran some D&D games with some really cool people like Kathleen on Letting Ready Run. And also did some other stuff. Mostly just yell at people on Twitter, now X, but has since migrated to Blue Sky because yeah. Anyway, so what game am I running right now? I just actually had to leave a campaign that had been going on for about a couple of years. I was the party wizard, but unfortunately everyone was in Seattle and I'm in Boston and the game starts at 10.
Oh.
So I was definitely doing my best. And I'm really sad because it was a really good group, but I'm really happy that we managed to do such cool stuff in that time. I'm hoping that now that my kiddo is a little bit older, I'm able to maybe do a little bit more with my local East Coast people for playing games. But in the meantime, yeah, the last time I played a campaign was actually Brides and Berserkers with Kathleen back earlier this year, so that was a lot of fun.
Fantastic. Well, Michelle, welcome back. Looking forward to hearing more from you tonight. As for another new face, Matt, welcome to our round table. Really excited for you to be here for the first time. Why don't you let everybody know who you are, where we can find you, and what game you're currently playing?
Sounds good. Thank you again for having me. It's great to be here with everybody. I'm Matt. You can find me pretty much everywhere on the internet as Flavor Pro Matt. I'm co-host of the Flavor Profiles Magic the Gathering podcast, which is myself and Draft and Nat just talking about all the things we love in Magic. But we also have a D&D live stream we do that's going to start up again in November. It is November. It's going to start up again this month now that we're done with con season, and it takes place in Ravnica, and she and I are co-DMs on it.
Oh, fantastic. Fantastic. Looking forward to hearing more about that challenge as well. Co-DMing, very interesting. And as for our last but not least panelist, Sage, welcome back to our round tables. Again, not your first time with us. Why don't you let everybody know who you are, where we can find you, and what game you're currently playing?
Hello, I'm Sage. You can find me everywhere on the internet at Staff of Sage. I am an Emmy award-winning tabletop RPG writer and gamer and MTG content creator. And I am currently playing our podcast, which we have now shifted over to Tales of the Valiant, which is Kobold Press's sort of D&D 5th edition clone with new additions with classes and rules and modifications. So we are trying that out.
Amazing, amazing. And we will make sure to send everybody over to Venture Maidens as well to see more of your work there too. But before we get into our first topic, I want to say, fam, we've already crossed our first donation threshold for the night. We're already up
Hell
over
yeah.
250 in donations. Incredible. We've just done our intros and we're up over that first threshold. So we'll be adding in a DM guide into our prize pool for tonight. So remember, out there in the audience, donate in $5 increments to be added to the draw for that too. Very exciting. All right. So I want to kick things off with some of our passions, some of the things that we've been working on, some of the things that we've been either struggling with as leaders of games, of managers of tables here, and what we find as our passions. And Sage, you love mysteries, right?
I sure do.
Why don't you let us know about writing the game and the structure of mysteries, particularly?
Yeah, I think for especially in lower levels, if you're playing something that's like D&D, where it has this kind of large class or like level progression, a lot of times mysteries can seem really appealing for low level classes before they get, access to that higher magic where they get to bypass a lot of obstacles. And so having those elements of intrigue are definitely very, of course, intriguing. But the thing about mysteries is that what makes a mystery satisfying to a viewer and as a player is that at the end, it feels like you have taken all of these bits of information and you have lined them up and you see the big picture. The trouble is when you're writing a mystery for players to move through, it cannot be linear in structure. Because what happens as soon as one of the players fails their check in order to, like their perception check in order to find the thing underneath the bed or tucked away in a hidden compartment? Now all of a sudden your story grinds to a stop. And now they're left wondering, well, can we do it again? What do we do now? And then the momentum of your story starts to slow down. And then you're like, all right, well, now how do we have to pivot? So the way I like to think about it is to build things in a circle and you're dropping your players in the middle of it. So you have these different pillars at the edge of the circle and they all have these connections that tie to each other, that oppose each other, so that no matter where the players turn within that circle, they can find a source of information that then directs them to somewhere else. And then and especially if your players like to split up, this encourages that behavior because they get to split up, do separate things, talk to separate people, and then come together with all of these different pieces and put together what is actually happening.
That's a great way of structuring it. That's a great way of looking at it. I saw a couple of our faces, eureka moments right there. Kathleen, your insights.
Yeah, well, I'm just chuffed because I've never met Sage before, but hearing him describe how he had written this mystery campaign, I'm like, oh my God, that's exactly, because I just did a mystery campaign and that's exactly the same sort of structure, hub and wheel structure I came up with. You basically start in the center. We were talking about this a little bit before. This is the spoiler text. So if you're writing a mystery, it's super linear. So if like every finger of mine is a plot point or reveal, you just move from the top and then you work your way to the bottom. But the reader doesn't get half of them, because that's where your protagonist comes in, and then they have to piece out what happened over here by moving through the other ones. It's very satisfying that way. And, you sort of go back and the characters can lie in a way that is really unsatisfying if you're DMing and stuff like that. Like if you're DMing, if you're lower level and your characters don't have zone of truth, if you're a higher level and your characters do have zone of truth, you just have to it is like literally the most high stakes conversation, because every lie you have to tell is of omission. Which is stressful for you, and I honestly do not recommend it. But when you have this, I did the same thing. I had like basically little adventure spokes, and it's like you would get a little piece of the information that would reveal the whole story for you as you did each adventure spoke, that would give you little bits of evidence that pointed back to somebody else maybe not having a weird motivation, or just kind of ruled out potential suspects, right? Which is how I did it. And then but the unsatisfying thing at the end is, because you sort of have to have all of these things have equal weight, it's really hard to point to your actual villain in what I find to be a really satisfying way. Because you don't know when you're going to get these clues. So none of them can be like totally over the top, right? Because I want to like sort of bespoke the information you get to the manner and you get it. Like it's all very like, I wish I had been able to put more clues to my actual villain in my campaign. That is my grand regret, that it wasn't more obvious who it was by the time you were finished. Although I think they were pretty much aware.
Fantastic. Michelle, you've got something to add as well.
Yeah, I love this idea of what I'm calling in my head the Vitruvian man, like plot wheel. It's so interesting to hear you describe that, because in my mind, I've definitely come into that problem where I'm doing it. Like the very beginning of Brides and Berserkers was not expecting everyone to roll just nat once.
All right.
I'm like, I guess the dice are telling a story. The story is that all of you are incompetent. But it was, I guess for me, like I run a couple of campaigns where there are mysteries. I always think of it almost, I also have a background in music, and so I almost think of it kind of like a fugue, which is basically like 4 or 5 parts. I think it's 4 parts, like soprano, tenor, soprano, alto, tenor, bass, and then you have this sort of ongoing theme that kind of repeats itself throughout the entire piece. But then, you have the different parts like weaving in and out. And so that's kind of how I feel whenever my players just kind of like go off kilter. I'm like, okay, we're gonna have like the soprano just go and do like a bunch of runs up here. And then eventually we're gonna guide them back to the original melody, and then just like move on again until somebody inevitably wants to find out why this bush is talking. And it's just going to be like, okay, well, we're going to go with this again, and we'll see how I rearrange things. I guess for me, I'm always just like, in the background, there's probably just a tiny version of me just like rearranging all of the furniture, and then just making sure that we return to that main theme. So that way the clues that I've thought about like still kind of come back. I just have to like put it in a different place.
The players always have a chance to trip over that ottoman, right?
Yes. Yes. The ottoman just randomly shows. It keeps showing up. You're like,
yeah, everyone has this ottoman. It's wild.
Is it a mimic? Why is it still
there was a sale at Plainer IKEA.
It's been a terribly polymorphed sheep this entire time.
Yeah.
Sage, you had something to add to that.
Yeah, I loved what Kathleen said about her reflection on wishing she had put in more clues to point to her villain. And I think that's a very common thing that people, it's a very common thing to want to protect the mystery as a GM, because you don't want them to figure it out too quickly. And you think, but what happens then if they figure it out? Then we'll be out of game. But that's the thing, is like, there's a difference between obscuring and having thing be a mystery. If you're actively obscuring information, you are withholding it from your players. You're actually removing the character agency in that situation. You want to actually give as much information as you possibly can and help them put together and have them supply that connective tissue. And if they figure it out super fast, that's awesome. Add another layer to it. Where does it go from next? Don't like put barriers in your own way that prevent the progression of your story.
Let them find those juicy tidbits and then let them reveal who's pulling the strings behind it. You want to give them all the pictures on the corkboard and let them use the red string, right?
Exactly.
Yep.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You can always add more pictures to the corkboard,
That's
right?
right.
Yep.
And then
Yep.
eventually they fight God. And
Always in Nephilim in my campaign.
Matt, how do you feel about creating mysteries and writing mysteries for your players?
I love mysteries, and I'm always like coming up with little ideas. If anyone's met me, they'll see I have like a pocket full of note cards constantly, and I'm just scribbling down ideas. And Sage, I love the description. You've just changed kind of my way of thinking and going bigger, and I love that. I always went by I think it was the Alexandrian who brought up the 3-clue rule. Like for every kind of mystery in each clue, you need 3 opportunities for the players because they're going to miss the first one, ignore the second one, and misinterpret the third one.
That's excellent.
The way I kind of was looking at it too is I used to do a lot of case study work for nonprofits, and I kind of looked at it as if you're a DM, you're all familiar with like the railroad, like you're railroading your players, it constantly goes. And I looked at mysteries as, okay, there's the railroad, your through line, but every railroad has a spur that could always lead back and give you a little side journey. And then you have your tourist traps that are kind of off the rails that you hope they don't go to, but you sort of need them. And that way, if they hit a spur and find something, you can always pivot from there and bring them back around to find something more. Or if they solve it really fast, which I get frustrated, but at the same time, I love it because I'm so excited for them. And I feel, as a writer, I feel seen. Like you saw how it all fits together, and then we can just build a new track together.
Yeah, as long as it's rewarding for the player and they go on these little side journeys and they find these little tidbits, that's the main point, as long as they enjoy it along the way. Kathleen, something to add?
Well, I think one of the things that you can do to sort of develop more, I guess, side journeys in real estate for your players to play in and add more nodes to your hub is that you can use your NPCs and you can give them all sorts of scintillating backstories. And, you know, maybe they like some other NPCs, but not so much. But maybe there's nothing going on there per se. But, you know, it's a really good jumping off point if somebody's just like, I like this, you know, I think this engineer is shifty. Like, what are they like at work and stuff like that? It's like, oh, well, actually, they're in a club with this one. Or like, it just gives you like, the more stuff you just happen to know about these people randomly, the more you're stocking your fridge ahead of time. It doesn't need to be important, right? That's what your players are to decide about.
Right.
It's always funny to see which are the important NPCs.
And that's a good point there. We've all played with players that get sidetracked or fall in love with an NPC. How do you weave that back into the narrative and the mystery as well? Is it that their favorite little NPC ends up being the mastermind at the end of the mystery? How much do we think on our feet when it comes to building a mystery like this?
I feel like I couldn't have changed in mine. I had worked it out in such a way that I could not have changed who the ultimate mastermind was, but how they approached it and what angle they chose to investigate and what we got to uncover in the campaign was definitely not what I thought we would be doing. I made my favorite NPC the bad guy, obviously, so I could play him more.
Perfect. Michelle, something to add there?
I think for me, it's like I think it's like finding the bad guy is often, or the villain is often just the tip of the iceberg. That's one thing I really love to do. It's like, yes, but turns out there's actually, like, sure, they did it, but why did they do it? What is the motivation there? That was something that I really delved into when I was doing Brides and Berserkers, because the villain in that particular piece was, spoilers, someone who was wanting to, like, what is their intention? What is their primary motivation? And how is it that they're going about it? Harming everybody else, because I think the best villains are the ones that mean well. So trying to understand why this person is doing what they're doing and then trying to undo it and then fix it, I think is also a big part of every campaign. Because it's not just enough to like do a big combat round. It's also just there are like actual things that need to be accomplished in order to do stuff, in order to make sure that the world is set at least somewhat to rights again.
Absolutely. Matt, your thoughts?
I have two thoughts now because I love what Michelle just said, is that everyone thinks they're the hero of their own story. Everyone wants to be, including the villains, and that's always fascinating. What's been fun for Nat and I in our campaign, trying not to spoil anything, is the first act of it is basically a locker room mystery, and we had a bunch of NPCs, and we're both playing different characters. So we kind of wrote up, here are the basic bullet points for them. Let's just go with it. And every session, I think I have an idea of, all right, this is going to be the one in the reveal. And then it's like, nope, we're going a completely different direction. And I love it. And even as a GM, you can still have the same sort of surprise that the players will get.
Absolutely. Sage, your thoughts?
Oh, I love being surprised by players. It's it's the best. I think for those moments where your players are maybe starting to get like way off track or following something that you kind of know is a dead end, I think taking at regular intervals to simply recap information, to be like, okay, it's just a few sentences. Be like, okay, you have spoken to the baker. You have found out that across the way that there was someone had left their door wide open. You have this lead that you can follow up who knows this, and you have this. And following those like 3 pieces of information that they have for them to like pursue those leads helps keep players on track and focus, and helps them develop goals. Because at the end of the day, like that's what we want to do as GMs, is we want to help facilitate the players and the characters' goals within the setting of the campaign.
Fantastic point. Kathleen?
Mm-hmm. My husband came in to grab something from me, as you might have seen. And I'm just trying to remember what I was going to talk about. Oh my God, I'm so sorry. My mind blanked.
No problem. Perfectly fine.
I'm so sorry. I just remembered it. It is a great way to, it's a great way to make sure that character goals are integrated into your campaign. Ask your characters before you start to define what NPCs are important to them and how they're related to it. And then you can use those NPCs in the campaign. That is a great way to stock your fridge. And also, really, I want to make sure that we normalize giving people recaps of information. I like to do literally like a bit of narration at the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
That's for streamed games. I wouldn't do it for a home game because that's too extra. But for a stream game, and when you've got people who are watching and stuff like that, it's helpful to have a recap. People should not ever fail your game because they didn't take good enough notes.
Right.
One thing I have done. Oh, sorry. One thing I have done in some games, especially if it's like a month or so between games, people don't remember. I'll say like, okay, for a point of inspiration, if anyone wants to remember what happened last time.
Yeah. I love that one too, because it also lets the players tell you what's important to them by what they remember too. If you get the players to do a recap at the beginning of the session, then they're going to tell you, hey, I remember this because I enjoyed it. I remember this because it stood out to me. And that gives you, as the DM, something to cling on to and something to build off of as well. All right. Fantastic. So we've talked about building the mystery, but if we're doing homebrew, how do we use that to inform, or what do we use to inform our homebrew? What do we use to balance that? Matt, you've got some thoughts about using existing modules, published modules, to brew and balance home games. Why don't you let us know a little bit about that?
So I'm a big believer in starting out with published modules, because a lot of people who come in to RPGs come in and I want to create a world, I have a homebrew, I have all this stuff, I don't know where to start. And it's a lot, and it's exciting and it's admirable, and I want to see everyone create that world that they picture and hopefully get to play in it. But what's great about a lot of the published ones is it teaches you not just the core mechanics, but it teaches you balance and how to make sure that your players are going to get an experience that they enjoy. Because you don't want to have a level 1 come into your world and suddenly they're going up against Tiamat, like a giant 5-headed dragon. That's gonna just, you have a regular sword that you found at the discount weapon store and go for it. You want to make sure that there's something to build, and it can also teach you about narrative. And what's great is there's so many resources out there, not just getting the official, but through like the Dungeon Masters Guild. There's some great ones. Adventure League is one of my favorite places to start and to kind of just read through and tear apart for ideas. You can reskin to whichever plane you want and make it work for you, and it'll teach you the basics. It gives you that crawl, walk, run.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It can be very intimidating for a new DM to come in and immediately try and build their own world. So, pulling
Mhm.
apart pieces that interest them from official sources, third party materials is a great way to get off the ground for sure. Sage, how do you feel about that as someone who's built their own world here?
I think my favorite thing is actually running modules, and it can be a very easy temptation to look at a published module and be like, this is the Bible. I need to adhere to this, be true to it, and hold true to these these DCs on these checks, otherwise they don't get the information or whatever it is. But the most important thing about modules is that they are a jumping off point for your own ideas. So before you run it, I always recommend reading the whole thing, like front to back, so you can understand what's the bigger picture, and that so you can break down. The way that I like to break down my notes when I'm like writing my session notes is what is literally going on and what appears to be happening. And so what is literally going on section tells you, like, these people, this faction is interested in this faction is interested in this, and they're at conflict with each other. And the what appears to be going on is, how does that play out in the world? What do the players see? Like when they're walking down the street, are people tense? Are all the shops closed? And that helps you flesh out that world. And that gives you a way in order to sink your teeth into conveying the story of the module at a deeper level than what is literally on the page.
Yeah, absolutely. Fair point. Michelle, your thoughts?
I guess I come from this from a completely different perspective because I have I guess I love setting things on different planes. I mean, obviously Theros Ravnica, but I have a history of just DIYing. And perhaps this is because I have a very deep love of like so many books. That I personally feel very comfortable just like doing a little bit of this, a little bit of that, pulling this and that, and just sitting down and for a few hours just like constructing an entire world. Not every person should do this. I should be very clear. But I feel like there is a lot of fun to be like just to kind of delve into it, especially if you want to start from something that's based in reality. I started writing a something based on the Unsleeping City arc for Dimension 20, but based in San Francisco. And as a result, I ended up doing a ton of research on San Franciscan history, Bay Area history, and then weaving in just a bunch of different pieces of lore and legend that I found, as well as, what I understand from current politics. It's something that if you are definitely interested in, I mean, I don't think that you should definitely just walk in and just do it without referencing. Modules are obviously very, very useful for this. Like if you're worried, here's a really great template for you to go and look at and check up against, just to make sure that you're not going and spiraling into complete nonsense. But yeah, it's very interesting to hear about other folks kind of starting from this very, I think, more traditional space where I'm just over here, I don't know, playing with various things in a trash can and being like, yeah, this works. Just kind of MacGyvering something and be like, this flies. Let's go.
I love
Everybody else
chaos.
is building their own sandbox, and you're in the trash can. Yeah.
I'm in the trash can, and I've discovered a broken blender and 2 broken pieces of glass. And I have somehow made a nuclear reactor.
Fantastic. Kathleen, your thoughts?
Well, I feel that I am not like I'm like with Michelle. I'm like, no, I want to be, and this is so I've done. I feel like you can do things if you're not 100% on a setting. If you were like, I like this setting, but it could be cooler. It could have vampires, for example, or, it could have my, this kind of thing. You can just add that to a setting. You don't have to get permission from anybody. My bylaw, both of my bylaw and order campaigns are set in Ravnica. Tangentially, I would say, but there's a lot of extra stuff and like things that I have built up to make it a world that I am, controlling more of the levers. And I invented new organizations. I had a whole system in place for the guild lists and all of that stuff that was nowhere else. And so you can take what you like from module, and just like Sage said, you can read through it and you can be like, but I want to add this, and that. And you should do it.
Absolutely. Sage, your thoughts?
I muted. There we go. The just add vampires. I love that. So it's so good, especially if you're running like a module that's in a really well-established setting that maybe you're not familiar with, but maybe one of your players is like an expert on, and you're worried. It is very easy to get worried of like, oh, I need to know everything about the history and the lore and the countries and the language and they're gonna know so much more than me. And like, it's okay. You can make stuff up 100%. Like, you don't have to be by the book, by the lore. Make it up. It's okay. And if that player says like, actually, you can be like, hey, this is our world that we're building and this is what's canon for our game. And you can have a conversation outside of the game to be like, to address that, but don't feel free beholden to all of these myriad details.
Let fun things be fun, right?
Yeah. You can always set it on like a weird island.
Weird islands are the best.
With
That's
vampires.
that's just how things are here.
Yeah, I think source books and modules, a lot of, D&D gaming tabletop gaming is like, it's cooking, it's not baking. Like, we can use this as a general guide, but feel free to add more or less salt, throw in some cinnamon, not too much. But
I love that analogy. It's fantastic.
Just enough. It's not baking. It's not a science. It's an art. So just have fun. If you really enjoy, putting werewolves in instead of vampires, go for it. And then maybe there's like a vendor in town who's making bank because they're introducing some kind of I don't know, evil like flea of some kind that's been terrorizing the werewolf population. Like, that could be fun.
Fantastic. So Matt, on this topic, is there a favorite thing of yours that you've taken inspiration from a published module and brought it into a homebrew?
I really like playing with memory a lot in games. And what I really enjoyed was sort of one of my favorite modules to run printed is Witchlight Carnival, because I love the Feywild, I love the mystery, and sort of the allure with a little hint of deadly. But I found fun merging that with the horrors of the Domains of Dread, to where I could really play with the idea of perception of reality. And I always give my players like a one sheet of like, here's all the themes you should expect. Please let me know if anything is like out the window and we will scrap this and do something different. But I found that those two sort of source books, Van Richten's Guide and then Witchlight, were a wealth of information to play with. And then merging in favorite books, especially around the fall, like something like This Way Comes or other horror Pawnee Pool changes everything. If I want to get really dark,
Love it. Fantastic. Michelle, anything that you've seen in a published module that's given you inspiration to bring into a homebrew?
This is so old school, but I love the. Oh, what is it? It's the Fandelver. It's the very
Lost
Lost
Mines.
Minds of
Lost
Fandel.
Mines.
No, I lost mine to Fandelver. I love that campaign because I love that module because I just love messing with it so much. I love, like, I have made those goblins do so many strange things and just like completely weird out my players because it's such a fun, like, it's such a classic, right? Like classic D&D. You're trying to find your friend. They've been captured by goblins. The goblins are with the cultist, and it's just like blah blah blah. But then you know what? Maybe it's an MLM, and they sell like I don't know shower curtains or something. It's like you whatever, and as a result, it becomes much more relatable. A lot of people, I think, especially newbies, walk into D&D and find it so intimidating, and especially when it has the trappings of a Peter Jackson film, aka LOTR / The Hobbit. It can be very it can be a lot. So injecting just a ton of humor and making it all very funny and very silly allows people, I think, to sort of let loose and play. Just play with whatever is happening.
Takes a
set
lot of the
fire
edge
to
off,
battle
for sure.
wires. It's great.
Kathleen, your thoughts?
This is no, it's not. So one of the things I just did, which was a really cool project, is I wrote a little bespoke one shot based on the Hank and John Green Holiday of Pizzamas, and I responded to that prompt by going, okay. So it's a pizza themed, but it's a nonsensical pizza themed holiday, and you want a Dungeons and Dragons one shot written around it. So basically my question for them, I was like, how enfranchised is your fan base with Dungeons and Dragons? Like, how complicated should I be making this? And we did a lot of talk and stuff like that. And it was like, let's make it simple. Let's like steer it towards like people maybe who are going to maybe try DMing for the first time because of this. And so it was very interesting. So I put in lots of instructions. In fact, put in so many instructions because that was my consistent playtest feedback from the other DMs who ran it, was like, put in more instructions on how you would resolve this if you don't know how to DM before. So hopefully if you read it, you go, oh, okay, I totally understand this. I don't want to do all this because this is not how I would run it. But it's like I put in like big letters at the top, take all of this and change it. Like, the box text is to be read to characters or players, bracket, like exclamation point, all caps, bold, or paraphrased, right? Just like this is a jumping off point for you. But it's interesting to sort of craft one of those and be like, go out there.
Definitely.
Succeed, I hope.
All right. Sage, anything from a published module you've taken inspiration from for any of your homebrews?
So I ran a campaign that was the Kobold Press's Empire of the Ghouls module, but I set it in my home world instead of their like published world. And I basically just took the main idea, which is that there is an empire of ghouls who live in the subterranean kingdom, and now they have figured out how that they can acquire this magical artifact that will allow them to walk in the daylight. And of course, ghouls not needing to sleep, they can eat carrion. So the more people that they kill, the more food they have, also the more soldiers. And how do you uncover and then defeat this existential threat to mortals?
Wow.
Hardcore.
Yeah, right.
My campaigns are like, there's a sausage factory.
Mine tend to end up with, and then you defeat a god, but it starts off very funny.
Yeah.
But turns out it's against God. And capitalism.
Oh yeah. Oh, they're all
Yep.
deeply anti-capitalistic.
Always, right? Always the end villain is capitalism.
And multi-level
regardless.
marketing.
Oh,
Yeah.
Yeah,
Accurate.
I love all of that, folks. Building in your own humor, your own approach to published modules, or taking inspiration from published modules into your own games. All it does is help customize things for you and allow you to put more of your spin and what your players are going to enjoy on something that's already out there and ready to use. There are a generation of game masters, dungeon masters that enter into the hobby and are either only doing modules or are completely anti using published materials and published modules. And for some folks, it's refreshing to know that there's a balance between the two, and it's important to strike that as well.
Yeah, porque no los dos?
Yes,
Yeah.
Insert
exactly.
GIF.
Exactly.
Steal everything. Well, I mean, look at it and go, oh, that's so clever. Now I can do it in my own way in my own campaign.
Hey, you just found a way to defeat capitalism. Steal everything.
Mhm.
There you go. So, folks, before we move on to the second half of our roundtable, I wanted to say we've crossed the $400 mark for
Woo!
donations tonight. So, thank you, everyone out there, for your generous donations. We will still be collecting donations for the back half of the roundtable. So, hit Command Donate in chat and donate in $5 intervals to be entered into our draw. At this stage, we are going to be giving away an Infinite Tokens prize pack, a dice set, a DM's guide, and a companion guide as well. So we will be adding in, for every $100 raised beyond this, another set of dice to give away too. So please continue to donate to Extra Life and Sick Kids Children's Hospitals. This is a fantastic cause, and we appreciate all of you out there so much. I do also want to remind everyone that we are going to do a Q&A towards the end of today's roundtable too. And we already have a few folks that have redeemed the highlight your question in chat points redemption. So please keep that rolling. We'll answer all of your questions, or as many as we can get to, tonight at the end of the session. So stick around for that. Okay, so diving back into our discussion, absolutely love everybody's insights here. I want to get onto our next topic here. And Michelle, this is one that is near and dear to your heart. But how do we make people feel safe and welcome at the table? How do we introduce them to play in a way that really ensures everybody gets what they want and feels welcome at the table?
Yeah, so this is, as you mentioned, a topic that is incredibly important to me. I neglected to mention at the top of the hour that I did some work with Asians Represent, which is a TTRPG advocacy group within this space that basically advocates for and promotes like basically correct and accurate representation of East and South Asian cultures within the space. We, I think, are often either unaware of or just want to dismiss the fact that this hobby has, in fact, been rather problematic in the past. The 70s weren't exactly the most progressive time. So, and Gary Gygax himself had, I think, some interesting ideas about, women. So with that in mind, there's a lot of baggage that comes with the game of D&D, and then of course, mostly with D&D, and as a result, all other games that fall into this category. There have been a lot of really fantastic efforts within the past few years to try to bring in more marginalized voices into the game and to create these spaces where people are not only able to feel safe, but to help create a world in which that safety can be guaranteed, which is not something that we can say, especially today. Uh, it's not something that we can necessarily guarantee in the real world. one of my biggest philosophies in life, which is very much Terry Pratchett oriented, but it's that humans really, we are very narratively driven, and as a result, the lives we lead and the actions we take are very much propelled by the stories that we tell ourselves and the stories that we write and ingest in order to color our reality. And so that's one of the reasons why I think spaces like this, where we can collectively talk about and create worlds where, certain people of certain backgrounds actually have representation and are able to be themselves, is so important, because I think one of the first steps in creating a better world is to be able to imagine it. One of the best tools that I have seen so far that helps do this is the lines and veils done by Kienas and a few other folks within the TTRPG space. This is a very important checklist. You can go ahead and just put it on, just do a query on Google, like lines and veils TTRPG, and you'll start, there's usually an Excel sheet of some kind that will go through basically just general topics that people might find really awkward or painful to discuss. And of course, this is also a great time to sit down with your players and ask them, what kind of tone are you hoping for this campaign? What kind of a story do you want to tell? Are we looking for something a little bit more fluffy? Are we looking for something a little bit more dramatic? What rating are we doing? One of the things that I will do with my players is ask, are we looking for a PG-13? Are we looking for an NC-17? Once we are able to establish that mutual understanding, I think everyone is then able to establish that foundation of trust, which allows for that freedom of play. And, I think more than ever, these spaces that we create within our imaginations, within our minds, with each other, are going to be one of the biggest, I think, sources of strength for many people out there. So helping to ensure that that base level is as solid as possible is, I think, integral to creating a successful campaign, a successful collective storytelling experience.
Absolutely. Sage, it looks like you shared a link in chat.
Thank you so much, Sage.
Yeah, perfect. Did you have something to add to that, Sage?
Kathleen had her hand up first. You go.
All right.
Oh, I just want to say that I love that you mentioned tone of the campaign and the adventure, because I don't think that comes up a lot. I feel like, lines and veils have been discussed. There's resources out there to be like, hey, do you as a group want to get there and just have a little chitty chat about how you might know one another, or if you know one another, or what brought you together, and let players build your own story. But I feel like tone is kind of important, because I think that's kind of, this is a little bit for the dungeon master, or the dungeon, not the DM, the GM, sorry, the person who's running the game. That's their thing to be like, okay, as written, I was thinking this would be pretty silly. But if nobody is vibing with that, that's a good chance to do a check or something like that, and just say, what kind of story do we want to tell as a group? And if people are like, man, I just want some sort of grimdark stuff, you can be like, well, I don't know if I'm into grimdark, but I think that's okay. And if it's just setting people's expectations so they're not going in being like, yeah, I'm gonna murder people, and you're like, look at the stuff that you immediately meet. They're a mischief, right? Nobody wants that. And so when I was doing the campaign I did, one of the things I did was I talked to you, Michelle, and was like, all right, what do people need to make sure that they know to discuss? And that was the three things, which was lines and veils and tone. And what was the third one?
I don't remember what I said.
Oh, how your characters know one another.
Yes,
just remind
yes.
people to that they, form a relationship. It can be coworkers.
It could be coworkers. Maybe all of you were part of a really terribly, a terrible polycule that ended on really bad terms.
Oh, that's a spicy start to a campaign.
And you all have the same warlock patron. It's very messy.
It's basically just like Alec McBeal, you're all part of the same warlock law firm, and you've all dated each other. So I
This is
wanted to go this
incredible.
campaign for a long time.
This is not
I'm
something a
here for
first
it.
time
Oh.
person should run though. Don't run that as your first campaign.
No,
as
no,
bad
no.
as it
Don't run
sounds.
that as a first campaign.
I love it.
Amazing. Uh, you have all gotten out under a contract from the same warlock patron, and you're part of a support group for recovering from former
Warlock patrons.
warlock patrons
Covering
Anonymous.
warlocks.
Yeah, awesome. Sage, you had something to add.
Yeah, so I think one of the things about safety tools, and like they're obviously great to use, especially if you're playing with people who you don't know very well, but they are just as important with people that you've been friends with for years, because you don't always know when something is going to cross a line, even if they've been your best friend for your whole life. You just never know how something is going to come across to someone. And the goal with using safety tools should never be that one gets called during a game. It should be that if one gets called during a game, you take the appropriate steps to make sure that they're okay.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
it's your response to that situation that makes you a great GM and a great friend, not that that situation never came up. And and also being sure to not just in your session 0, but continually throughout the course of your campaigns to check in to be like, hey, how are we all feeling on these lines and veils? How are we feeling about the tones and expectations? Is there anything that we want to adjust?
Mhm.
And always continuing to revisit that conversation really opens up that space to build trust between you and your players, to know that they can come to you with things and know that they'll be heard.
Absolutely. Fantastic point. Matt, you had something to add.
I wanted to just echo something Kathleen said about its collaborative storytelling. Kind of, with RPGs, it's really an embodiment of we're all in this together. You may be facilitating the story, but you're facilitating it together at the table, and you need to build the trust that Sage was talking about and leverage everything that Michelle brought up. And I love the kind of call out to tone in doing the checkup and just maintaining that, giving them the tools and normalizing. It's okay if we need to stop the session to have a conversation, either as a group or if we need to peel off and have a one-on-one.
Absolutely. There's a great comic that I've seen before of session 1 of a campaign, and everybody's playing goofy, silly characters, and then session 30 of the campaign, and suddenly it's devolved into grim, dark, and suddenly the joke character is the one who's got this really heartfelt moment to it.
Yeah.
But that's part of these lines and veils as well, is where do you want to start out, and then that continual check-in of where do we want this to go to. The session 0 might start by setting these, but that can change throughout the course of the campaign. Those regular check-ins and that regular communication with your players lets them know, hey, if things get a little bit darker, if things get a little bit more serious, are we okay with that? Is that the direction we want to take this? And as long as they've got that consent, as long as they're comfortable with that, and as long as if something comes up that they aren't comfortable with, you know how to handle it, to Sage's point. Yeah, there we go. Exactly. And I know that some GMs have hand signals for the table as well when something crosses a line as well, which is a great way of just non-verbally not derailing what's going on right now, but knowing, hey, let's maybe pump the brakes on this. Let's have a discussion about it, and it's up to you to moderate that as well. All right, Kathleen, you had something to add.
I was gonna say that's so like the sort of there's a joke from a Loading Ready Run video. Continuous enthusiastic consent from Bonus and the consent skull that appears when you're doing amorous things. But what I like, so one of the things I like to do is if it's longer than like 3 sessions or even 4 3, do it at any time after you do your session. Be like, couple days afterwards, be like, hey team, let's have a check-in. What are you vibing with? Like, did you like that kind of thing? Or do you want to like, you're like bleh at the end of it and you want to go do something else? Like, if you are setting up a campaign like Sage was describing, where you have these mysteries, you could do all of these different spokes and events and stuff like that. And you can say, what do you want to go do, team? I've got a whole week or 2 weeks to put this together. What kind of experience are you looking at? Are you can ask them what kind of story that they want to tell, and you can prep things for them based on their feedback, right? Because it is collaborative.
Absolutely. Michelle, you had a point.
The last thing I'll say is that you, as the person running the game, are also entitled to stop the game at any point. You are allowed to have your own lines and veils, and you are entitled to the other players at your table respecting those boundaries that you set. Sometimes players might get a little edgy. Sometimes they might get a little like excited and they'll lapse into things. And I think one of the things too is like when you do find yourself crossing that line or somebody else crosses that line, it's also important to not like villainize or penalize anyone. It's just, it happened. Let's assume good faith. Let's back it up. Let's go another route. And then afterwards, let's check in. But be certain to advocate for yourself as well. I think oftentimes GMs are so much, we're placed in a position of service, right? And so it's very difficult at times to advocate for ourselves while also like remembering 50 different NPCs in a sheep. It's not the greatest headspace to remember that you also matter, but you also matter.
Fantastic. Sage.
And I think too, a lot of times with safety tools, we tend to think about them in the context of trauma and triggers, but that doesn't have to be their only utility. Like for example, I find it just full body cringe inducing when I am setting a scene that is like maybe very horror based with tons of tension, and then the players undercut it with a joke. That like cuts me to my core and makes me not want to play the game. And so in that point too, that's also a moment where you can use an X card to be like, hey, like, I want to take a step back and just acknowledge like you guys are probably all feeling tense. And that's probably why a joke was made, but that also makes me feel undercut as a storyteller. And, so it doesn't just have to be traumas and triggers. It can be things that, are also bother you for whatever reason.
Absolutely. Kathleen?
I do think, aggrieved DMs, we're not aggrieved, but I do think it's important that like Sage and Michelle were saying that you have to advocate for yourself to make sure that you are comfortable playing a game. Like I have my lines and veils that I will stick in every game. And one of the things I'm like, I will never do a romance scene with you. I don't care. If you want to romance an NPC, we can roll dice to resolve how well that works for you or figure it out in the context of the game. And then you can report back to me later and tell me what happened. I don't care. Like, I will adjust the NPC's behavior to you, but I don't need to get into those nitty gritties. And I think it's like whatever that line is for you, that you just be like, no, I'm holding fast to it. This has never come up, but I always say it because I don't want to do it so badly. But just like, you put a lot of your brain meats into DMing something. You're putting so much work into it. You're writing descriptions, you're coming up with puzzles and stuff like that. And just being like, I want to enjoy what I'm doing is very important.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And we talked about setting some of these lines and veils pre-game, pre-campaign as well. And Sage, it looks like you've shared some tools about collecting feedback post-game as well. How do we feel about a post-game breakdown or like a post-session aftercare with our table mates here as well? Do we collect information and feedback after each session, or is it at every break? And what do you use with that? Is it just a conversation? Do you do something like anonymous forms as well? Any tools or advice for the audience? Matt, any thoughts there?
Yeah, I'm a big believer in feedback. I always want it. I love constructive criticism. What I do for games is I'll usually send out a Google form that I'll build out for the campaign. and break it down off of kind of my outline for the session, and then kind of modify it if things went differently, because I want to hear from them. I want to hear what worked, what didn't, because sometimes they might not be comfortable to speak in person or in front of everyone else. And then if we take a long break, most of my games tend to be virtual, so we're very like compact, so it waits to the end. But if there's a space in the middle to kind of talk, like, are y'all okay with this, how this is going? If something goes differently, or it seems that the table is trying to shift the tone maybe lighter, then it's kind of one of the things in teaching we always say is, if you have a question, guaranteed someone else has it, and it, maybe ask it for the class, because someone might be afraid to. And if we can kind of have that conversation in the middle, maybe that will get others to kind of feel more comfortable and open up.
Absolutely. Michelle, you had something to add.
Just that, I love the Stars and Wishes. There's also Roses and Thorns. I think that's another format that folks use. After it sometimes I just want to express, like, sometimes it is really difficult, especially after a session, to collect feedback because everyone is just so tired. Maybe that's because I play with other olds like myself, but everyone is just so tired. So it can be, I like the idea of like having a form for sure. One of the things I'll do is like I'll just always try my best to be available and emphasize like that I am always available for feedback and to chat whenever. Like my table is like, these are my people and I want to take care of them. I also want to take care of myself, but it can be tricky sometimes, especially if you are the person who needs to give feedback to someone else. That can be a difficult conversation for sure. However, trying to approach those conversations from a place of empathy and compassion, just trying to understand, what's going on in their headspace, why, that might have happened. I think that is one of the best places to begin when you have those difficult conversations, if you need to chat with someone about what happened during last session and things like that. Depending, of course, on what the drama and like the severity of the situation, of course, you may have to chat about other things. One of the books that I really enjoy like recommending to people is what's it called? Nonviolent Communication by Marshall Rosenberg. It's a fantastic book that goes into kind of like the core of like why people disagree, and it proposes very good structures around like how to have productive conversations in order to make sure that everyone's needs are met. So this does seem a lot. Like, I know a lot of people are like, I'm a GM. I was going to do dragons. Why am I dealing with difficult conversations?
Why is there feelings? Why does dragons have feelings?
Dragons have feelings. People have feelings. So it's a good idea to just, make sure that you have the tools that you need in order to create a really fantastic space for you and your players. And these also translate outside of the game. So win-win.
Absolutely.
It's a great book.
Now, I usually collect feedback from my players after every game, but that's largely because I've been playing with the same group for about 10 years now, and we've got that comfort level with each other. But I did have one of my regular players reach out to me some days after a session saying, hey, it's taken me a couple of days to digest that session. And because it is still on my mind, I wanted to talk to you about this. And it's part of our role to be open to that, because you might know someone for that long and you might think that you know what their lines and veils are, but you never know when something is added to that, and you never know what the background is as well. Being open for that kind of feedback and being open to add things to that not only helps you make you a better GM, but makes you a better friend in the end too. Kathleen, to add?
Oh, yeah, I wanted to say I had a situation where I was running a game, and the person was just like, I was like, all right, here's some options available to you based on things that you told me that you wanted earlier. Now they're coming back to roost. And it was like, nah. And I was like, oh, that's fine. I'll give you the options again. And it was still like, nah. And it was like, so I literally just had to say, what can I do for you? These are available. You can say yes, unless you don't want to. Do you want to be more persecuted? Do you want people to hate? I can make people hate you more, right? Like, so it's always good to have a check-in, especially even if it's not like causing that much friction. But if you're like, my player, I'm trying to give you what you wanted. I think of myself as I'm in wish fulfillment, but all the wishes come from monkeys' paws, right?
Those poor monkeys.
They're demon monkeys. They just grow new hands when they drop off. So they're fine. No animals were harmed in the making of these cursed monkey paws. But the point being, right? Like, it's fun to get what you want. It's more fun to get what you want with strings attached and complications that bring you further into things. But if people aren't taking your beautiful cursed offers, like, what can you do to sweeten the pot for them? And just have this dialogue and check in, like, are you still going? What can I do to you? What can we do to help you and help the whole game where everybody is feeling connected?
Slap's story module. What can I do to get you into this story
Yeah,
today?
exactly. But I mean, there's a certain amount of buy-in that I feel that your players owe you. They have to care about the story at least a little bit. They can be very glib about it and be like, get a load of this asshole when you reveal your big bad, if that's their character. I don't care. But you have to be like, well, he is like a 7th level warlock or something like that. I want to take this. I'm going to engage in good faith with whatever you're presenting through the lens of however my character is.
Mhm.
And if your player's not engaging with you, I think it's very fair to check in and be like, what's in there's so many things in the box. Tell me what you want.
Yes. Yeah. We have all of this sand to play with in this
Mhm.
box. Tell me what you want to build.
Mhm,
I'm still in
mhm.
the trash can.
I want to visit this trash can.
It's amazing. It's outside the toy store, so I get all these different springs.
And it's nuclear powered.
Sounds very Fallout. I love it.
Yes.
Oh, fantastic. So before we get on to our next topic here, again, I wanted to remind everybody watching that we are still taking donations. We have reached the $400 mark for donations for tonight. So thank you everyone out there, but you can hit Command Donate in chat right now. Make sure to donate in $5 increments to be entered into our draw for prizes at the end of tonight's session. We'll be giving away Infinite Tokens prize packs. We'll be giving away a dice set. We'll be giving away 2 guidebooks as well. And as we drive that total up higher, we'll be adding more dice sets to the pool too. So please help support the great cause of Sick Kids Children's Hospitals through Extra Life, and we will make sure that all of these donations go to a fantastic cause. We are going to be doing Q&A in just a little bit as well, so if you've got any questions for our panel, of which there have been a couple of submitted already, do redeem the highlight my question point submission in Twitch so that we can answer your questions at the end of today's session. All right. So we've talked about some of the building of the game, building the mysteries of the game. We've talked about taking inspiration from published modules. We've talked about making the game table a safe space as well. Kathleen, you want to add more fun to the table. And I think one of the best ways to add fun to the game is just make people roll more dice. Why don't you expand on
More
that thought
dice.
for us?
No player has ever looked askance at you saying, actually, could you roll an extra d6 for this, right? Like, in fact, if you could add several to their hand, they're going to be happier. Just because I like making things go clickety-clack, so everybody does. But realistically, there's a few ways that I want to, like... D&D is fundamentally a combat game, but it doesn't have to be. And I was talking to another friend of mine who's a GM and also a game designer, and they were saying, I was like, yeah, so I invented all these little like sub things that you could do with the dice and like where you'd add numbers and subtract them based on player behavior and stuff like that. And if you crossed like a danger threshold, the thing would happen, but you got to roll that every turn as you went through. that was one of my more evil ideas. That's in Pizza Myth. Basically, you're going through a weird mirage field where nothing is as it seemed, because it's based on the Hank and John Green meme, the field with no edge. So I was like, okay, how can I make that horrible? Because it's Dungeons and Dragons and you have to hit things in the game. So yeah, you would get people to say, I'm ready, or no, I'm hiding. And then that would change their numbers. And then you find out when they get attacked. Then you get to roll dice theatrically. And that's kind of cool to like get them to weigh in. But also you can give your characters all sorts of bespoke abilities that let them maybe roll a dice or something like that. Like, there can be magic items that are damaged and will degrade. So you have to add extra dice when you roll. And if you reach like a threshold that maybe keeps ticking up or randomizes, or however you want to describe it, like there's so many different ways that you can complicate the math. And whatever that's for you and your players to work out what kind of vibes you want to do. But I recommend stealing everything that you see that you like and just adapting it.
Absolutely. I think that there's something to be said about complicating the math and just making more of the math as well. Making it too complicated at the table can definitely dissuade players from rolling more dice, but I think everybody just likes picking up a handful of dice and rolling them. It's one of the reasons everybody loves casting Fireball, right? You just want to grab every D6 at the table and roll it, right? And nothing as a GM is more threatening than just picking up a bunch of dice and rolling them behind the screen.
It's mostly D4s.
And they're like, how many dice was that? You see the panic and the sweat drip down their faces.
Oh, yeah. I literally put descriptive text in the Pizza Misadventure. I was like, make sure you roll your dice as dramatically as possible while doing this. I'd say things like, you pass through this section of the field unharmed, and But what you can do is I love doing this, is you can give your, if based on your character's backstories, give them bespoke abilities. One of the things I did when I was making characters for Pizza Myth, I didn't actually do the stats for them. Jordan Hatton, who's a fellow GM, she designed the stats for the characters. I just designed the bespoke abilities. So I just want to make sure I'm not claiming credit there. But one of the things I did was, because they were based on like memes, I was like, all right, one of these memes is the actress Helen Hunt. I'm not making this up. So anytime you made, and so the character was a bard, and anytime she used a bardic skill that could charm or change things, the player just gets to roll an extra d6, and on a 6, they channel the radiance of Academy Award-winning actress Helen Hunt, and you automatically succeed on your saving throw. It's a very small chance, but the excitement of possibly having that happen could be, and what a storytelling moment for your character. And I'm not saying make it as silly as that, but like, what if, they had this magic sword that maybe doesn't do anything, but it's a family heirloom because that was in their background, and something like that. And like, whatever, find a way. It doesn't have to be big, but it just is this opportunity for something exciting to happen.
Yeah. Michelle.
Oh, right.
Sorry, I'm playing with your hand there. That's what's going
on. Yeah, one of the things I love to do is basically, I love, one of my favorite things to do as a GM is listen to my players try to BS their way into doing something that they shouldn't really be doing, or will have consequences. Like, and so I will often make them roll either a related stat. Like, I would just like, okay, well then explain to me how you're going to do this. Like, you're going to break into this prison by trying to seduce a guard. The guard is a construct. Please explain. And so I'm just like, okay, all right, go ahead and roll for that. Or oftentimes if they are going, one of the things I like to do with it if my players are in dungeon is just sometimes I will make them roll like a d20 just to see like how well they roll, and then that just in my head is like, okay, well that's interesting. I guess it's how bad the next thing is going to be on the list. Or I'll like make something else really good happen. Like it's basically like a luck check, right? And so luck checks I think are so fun, just to throw in every now and then,
Mhm.
just to see how people do and to see how they react to it and then just play off of that. But yes, giving the opportunity for your players to like take the floor and then see how well they can persuade you to do something is a great time to like throw in. It doesn't have to be a D20 either. You just like go ahead, roll me a D100 and see what happens.
Yeah. I love that as well because it introduces some of the most well-known and well-remembered moments as well. Because you throw in a luck roll and somebody aces a luck roll, and suddenly they have a story that they're going to tell for years and years, right? One of my favorite phrases is the "you can certainly try." Right? There's no harm in trying, but there might be harm in failing. That's the whole thing. Let your players roll dice. Let them give it a shot. Right? Matt, how do you feel about making players roll more dice?
I love the sound when it hits, and the worst that the worst that anyone can say when you say I have an idea and pitch it is someone says no, and that's not so bad. And sometimes the dice come up wrong. I love the idea of Michelle's like, just roll a whatever, roll a d20, and what I've done in the past, like, give me 2 d20s, and I'm not looking for a number. I'm really looking for odds or evens, but they're like, oh, what does this mean? And really all it is it just means the wind's going to come from the east and not the west, but you don't know that. But you get like that moment. There's so much emotion and tension that comes from the dice hitting the table in any form. And you can have so much fun with that as a table, as a group, with interpretation, or even asking the players, how do you think that does? And if they say, I think it did pretty well, I'll be like, you know what? I did too. Let's go with it.
You're such a teacher. You're such a teacher. Ooh.
I love that.
How do you think you did? Wow. Let's go over your test results.
I mean, there's how well I think I did and how well my character thinks they did.
Truly.
We could split the party, or we could split the timelines and go both ways.
Oh my gosh, the trousers of time.
So Sage, how do you feel about this? Giving your players opportunities to roll more?
I love mini games within the context of any TTRPG. They are so much fun, and really, no matter what tabletop game you're playing right now, look to other tabletop games for inspiration to incorporate and pilfer mechanics from, because you can find so much great inspiration for how other systems handle certain things that you can incorporate into your own game, which makes it so much fun.
Absolutely. I think it was Halflings and Giants. Has anybody seen that? So I think it's something that the Penny Arcade team came up with as a mini game for their Acquisitions Incorporated campaign. But it's basically a tavern dice game that they play as a mini game at the table too. Which is super interesting. It's kind of a push your luck system using your set of D20s at the table, which was a ton of fun to watch, at least. Kathleen, something to add?
Speaking of mini games, this is so in By Law and Order 2, there's a sport that I was like invented, but had no definition of. But one of my characters said that they were a former champion. So over the course of the campaign, I was like, hey, tell me about some swamp ball stuff because you know so much about this. And I just let them riff and talk about all of these things. And then all of a sudden, the big surprise for session 8 is that you're not playing a normal game of Dungeons and Dragons. You are going to be air-butted. As in, there's no rule that a dog can't play swamp ball into keeping up to fill in for the enemy team because they all got food poisoning because of who you talked to last week.
Incredible.
So I had all of these. So I took like a whole, like so many. I was like, what's could you describe the one who smelt it, dealt it rule? Like that was the kind of stuff we were talking about. And like tried to come up with like this whole bespoke sport thing. So like this thing had like, there's a position called a throttler. There was like 3 goalies. There was somebody whose job was just to set traps. Like, it was ridiculous. And that was the session. It was basically one big combat. And unbelievably, my players won, even though it was like kind of like but basically what it is, I set the skill checks for the first round of the game, the first combat encounter, very high, but didn't give the enemy team really any opportunity to score. But the idea being that you would have to roll exceptionally well to luck your way in, if you're not a pro player, to score a point here. And then as the game went on and my players I knew would have more experience, I gradually lowered the skill check threshold for them succeeding and stuff like that, to give them a little bit of like oomph, and then adjusted the numbers on the fly, because that's what you do to make it exciting. But like my players legitimately in the first round, even with super high, just like nailed their rolls. And I was like, you know what? You're going to steamroll this other team. And you're going to make the crowd mad. Go for it. Go, guys. There's your consequences.
Amazing. Absolutely love it. We're just about to get into our Q&A for today's roundtable session. So audience out there, I want to let you know this is your last chance to get in some questions. I'm going to start with a question of my own before we get into the ones that have been submitted already. But I want to ask our panel one of the age-old questions here. How do we feel about fudging rolls behind the screen? Add to the tension, remove from the tension, doesn't matter at all. Kathleen, look on your face right there seems to say it all.
I literally, in this published thing, I said, here's your like perception checks thresholds are usually like, I don't know, 8 to 10. And like, that's a range for whatever you're willing to accept. And like, I literally gave ranges of HP for my bosses and put in the instructions at the beginning. If this is too hard, add an ability, give your boss a bonus action, up his HP, like give him an extra spell slot. If this is too hard, take off some HP. Don't have him adjust everything to what your players, and obviously challenge is good and fun, but you don't want to, like, I don't know, maybe your players want to die. It's based on whatever works for you, right? The numbers are not concrete. They are secondary to what is going on in the game and how you are playing it with your players. So if these numbers are not challenging enough for your players, they're not set in stone, right? Is really important.
Yeah, I think that's a fantastic point there too. And you mentioned I'm dancing Michelle's hand there, but you mentioned the boss HP or enemy HP. One thing that I've done when running the game is I don't even track enemy HP. An enemy goes down when it's dramatic for the table. That's what happens.
Oh my god, I'm the complete opposite.
Really?
100%. This is killing me.
No, I am always, if it is like a vicious mockery is the last thing that's thrown by the bard, and they're at single digit HP, and that's enough to kill the enemy, then again, it's dramatic. It's the story for the table. That's the way that I DM, at least. Michelle, you had something to add, sorry.
Yeah, no, I always fudge stuff if I am a rule of cool GM. I look at my table. Are they having fun? What, because I played with them, helps them have more fun? And if this is not fun, then I will figure out a way to make it fun. And if that means I have to just make up some GM nonsense behind the screen, so be it. I don't throw like my HPs out of the window necessarily, but I will adjust it, especially because, I mean, if we're talking specifically about D&D, it can get so grindy, especially if we're doing high-level combat. Like, we're doing lair actions, we're doing bonus actions, and then other minions might get, like, thrown into the mix, and then people are going to summon things. It can get so hard to pay attention.
Mm-hmm.
And as a result, like, one things I will do is I will try to, like, have, like, little side events happen during the combat to kind of help spice things up, but I will also take those moments to kind of just like observe my players and figure out like, okay, do I need to like turn this up to 11? Are we going down to like 3?
Mhm.
So it is very much on Kathleen's like philosophy as well. It's like, there's a range. There's a range. Are we having fun? Are we not having fun?
Yeah, exactly, exactly. Sage, how do you feel about that? The behind the screen, keeping track of everything diligently. Sounds like HP is something that's it's one of your must-haves there.
I mean, so my philosophy is that we are sitting down to play a tabletop role playing game. A game has rules to adjudicate, and part of that trust that comes in a game is that everyone adheres to the rules and agrees to them. If your table all agrees, like, yeah, some fudge dicing works, it for me that must mean that it has to be true for the players and the GM. I think just GMs or just players having that access to that makes it unbalanced, and shifts the power dynamic, which I think can lead to some potentially sticky situations. So in general, I like to be like a stick to the rules kind of player. But if the combat is ground to a halt, if it's no longer fun, I think of ways outside of like I mean, part of avoiding that is building in objectives in combat that are outside of reduce this creature's HP to 0. So, what are the conditions where the creature would want to flee, or they would give up, they would spare them, they might propose something else, that so that way that if it does grind to a halt and no one's having fun, you can pivot to something else.
When does Team Rocket blast off again? Right.
Mm.
Right. Matt, how do you feel about the topic, fudging dice rolls, making things up behind the screen?
I'm kind of a mix and match. I like having a sense of what the number is, so I can kind of keep track and give the players a feel, because there are the player. I try to go with what the players prefer. There's some who are very numbers based, some who are very story based. So I want to kind of give the feel for both. But what I like to do is I try to break it down into a sense of time. And if it starts getting too grindy, I start looking for a dramatic moment, because if I can give time back to the players to where after the combat we can really resolve the story after, and not just, oh, we're out of time because everyone has to go because of different obligations. Combat's over, see you next week, and then start in the aftermath. We can at least provide closure a little bit.
Mm.
So I kind of do a little of both, but also I like fudging rolls if I know a player is trying to do something epic. I like rewarding big ideas and like moonshot moments where they want to try and do something way outside the scope and be like, I want to see that happen, because everyone's going to cheer.
Yeah, it's creating those moments. That's really what this is. I love when players end up talking about a session months later, years later. It's creating those where they start talking to somebody else about a moment in their game, and that for me is really what this is about. Kathleen.
You can always, if you're always like, God, I really want my player to succeed, but they're just so short. You can always say something like, "Oh, my cat's screaming in the background. I apologize." You can always say something like, "Hey, can you describe how you draw on your inner well of perseverance, or whatever, or like your warlock patron, or your training, or etc., your vengeance?" And then you can be like, "All right, roll a d4 or roll a d6, or okay, roll me a d10, and then let's see if the universe is going to reward you."
Yeah, it goes back to things like those luck rolls as well. Hey, just roll a naked d20 for me. We'll see odds or evens whether you get it, or you hit a certain threshold and you have to do that cool thing. Create one of those tales. Michelle.
Yeah, I've had that happen during, I think, the last one at the second to last session of Brides and Berserkers, where Cam rolled a 13. And Cam
he
had
rolled
just
two 13s on an advantage
two
dice.
13s. I was like, this is a cool thing that you've just done. You've like kind of challenged / entreated this this god that you have this very weird relationship with, and you do something very cool. And eventually I was like, okay, remember you have Bardic. And so I feel like in those moments, it's just like, and rolling more dice and stuff like that. But it's also, you really, really want to make them succeed, even though you don't want to make it too easy. But at the same time, like, cool story moments, like, really make the whole thing shine. And I just love being able to, I don't know, provide that. Perhaps I am too generous of a chaotic GM, but I enjoy, like, just sort of squidging things here and there in order to sort of make it work. It's a little like, making art, like, arms don't really look like that, but if you look at it a certain way, they kind of do.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's about making those moments feel earned
Mhm.
as well, right? Rather than
Yeah.
handed to them too.
Mhm.
Again,
Mhm.
it's those takeaways that last a lifetime. Right. Okay, so we're going to get into our audience Q&A, but last chance out there for donations. We're going to be doing our draws in just a moment as well. Remember, folks, command donate in chat, donate in $5 increments. We will be drawing for prizes in just a couple of moments. All right, so we're going to get into the first of our audience Q&A. This one is from the Rising Tides out there in chat, but they ask, what is the panel's favorite element of a film, TV show, or novel that inspired something in a campaign that you've run? They would be especially curious to know if you had to homebrew it or what system you ran it in as well. Anybody taken anything from popular media and incorporated it into their campaigns? Matt, you're nodding vigorously. Sounds like you have.
Our whole Ravnica campaign on the show is a progression of, like, film and book references. So, like, the first act is Agatha Christie's and Then There Were None and Haunting of Venice. From there, it shifts to the old film The Third Man. Then it goes to The Inside Man, Papillon, and then rounds off with, like, a rousing homage to the A-Team.
Great.
As kind of at least the story beats to try and fit within, but our party is rather chaotic and I love them dearly. So wherever they want to take it, let's go.
Fantastic. Love those inspirations. Absolutely incredible. The Papillon is like, oh, hey, Prison Break's time, right? Like,
Yeah.
fantastic. Michelle, you had something to add.
I have a history of taking, I guess, TV shows and movies and whatnot, and just dumping them into different settings. My first campaign with Linear Run was Queer as Hell, which was basically, oops, all bards, let's make Queer Eye, but oops, all bards, and put it in hell. What happens now? And it was a lot of fun. We had each of the players take on, like, one of the different aspects of, like, self-esteem, style, cooking, or, all those other things. It was a lot of fun, and I really enjoyed, like, thinking about with the players, like, how does your expertise in this particular field, like, come shine through in other ways, like in combat or how else. And so that was pretty epic. My second campaign, Brides and Berserkers, was heavily influenced by The Hangover, which was really, really fun. And now I've just been hankering to do this, like, oops, all warlocks, like Ally McBeal kind of situation.
Nice.
Which I think would be a lot of fun. I really enjoy I love movies, I love TV shows, but as an inherently comedic person myself, I love being able to take them and twist them in a weird way and just kind of plop them into, like, a Faerun sort of setting and see what people do. Because it's not what you expect, and it's the twist in the unexpected that I think allows for some really random and fun moments.
Absolutely. Kathleen, by the sound of bylaw and order, you might have some
Dun, dun.
some inspiration.
Just the sound of a
Yeah.
sausage thwacking a desk. Dun, dun.
Kitty tax.
My inspiration for Bylaw and Order was, hi cat. Oh, hello, goodbye cat. Was that I wanted to explore a Ravnica that worked. Because if you look at the cards, they're very combat based. And when you're building out the civilization that supposedly has stood for 10,000 years, how does this work if it's all skullduggery and backstabbing? There's got to be a different kind of cultural expectation on Zenda, or not on Zenda. Sorry, whoa, that's a different place that I'm thinking of on Ravnica. I have book brain. There's a cultural expectation that people must be more cooperative there. Otherwise, you couldn't have lived there for 10,000 years. So I sort of based it on like this very kind of it's the most Discworldy part of Ravnica, we'll say. It's got a lot of like civil organizations and little like independent business groups and stuff like that really like fleshes out this stuff. And what I think is really funny is that Michelle and I have both put Cut Me Own Throat Dibbler as background characters unconnected into both of our campaigns. Just like it was like, oh, it's like the Spider-Man pointing at Spider-Man meme. But that's, I think, my favorite thing to steal from is books. I'm not actually much of a television or movies person, which sounds kind of weird given my work, but I prefer fiction and music and nonfiction books. Nonfiction books are the best place to steal things from, by the way.
1000%.
Mhm.
Some people,
Oh my God.
yeah, have lived wild lives.
People have
Yep.
lived wild lives. Other civilizations, other like just like times in history are so interesting to like pull like themes of intrigue from and stuff like that. Like nonfiction is probably the most place that I pull ideas from.
Like, if you're looking for fodder, check out like Aleister Crowley, the life of Aleister Crowley, and the life
That
of
dude's
Lord,
wild.
Lord, and the life of Lord Byron, the man so
Mhm.
toxic he inspired
Oh my
not one
God.
but 2 monster books.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Incredible. Sage, how about you? Any media that you've pulled something from for your campaigns? TV,
Oh my God.
film?
A little bit of everything. So my partner and I, he is actually a game designer and professional writer, and we both have a deep love for writing, storytelling, and televisions and movies. So every time we sit down and watch something, like we did this for Rings of Power, for example, we sit down and we analyze it from the context of there is a GM and the characters in the story are the players, and we think about, okay, what was the story the GM was trying to say, and how did the characters interact and completely derail the story, or what expectations weren't met, or what checks did they fail that led them from situation to situation. And it makes for such a wonderful exploration to think about like pacing and to think about, you know, how would you incorporate those ideas into your own games. One of my big draws is like 1970s and 80s horror movies to steal from like B horror movies. You could find
Mhm.
such great monsters.
So good.
Absolutely.
MST3K gold fodder. Just
Oh.
like,
Yes.
Oh yeah.
so good.
Well,
Oh.
Night of the Lepus. I should like put that in something because giant rabbits destroying everything sounds epic.
that is queued up for like a Monty Python style crossover as well, which absolutely perfect.
Kaiju, but make it rabbit.
Amazing. So moving on to our next question from the audience. What are your outlets to gush about all of the fun little secrets or encounters you have planned for your party beforehand? Uh, our question asker Crab Basket says that they live with 2 GMs, and as a non-player, they love to gush to him about everything that they have in store for their players. Do you, as GMs, have outlets to talk about this stuff with your partners, your friends, anybody not in your campaigns? Michelle.
My partner / husband, Kathleen's met him, but he's a wonderful person. I love him dearly. We've been together forever. But he is decidedly much more stoic and like just than I am. So basically what will happen is I will plan something. I think it's very cool. And then I will rush into his office as he plays Factorio and just say, hey, check this out. I'm doing this and this and this, and they're going to do this. And then he just looks at me. He's like, cool. Okay. And then I just sort of flee like I'm some kind of... It's very much like, just like I think I did a cool thing. I'm like a little kid with like a drawing, just like, look what I did. It's so cool. It's like, okay, go put it on the fridge. Okay.
I'll put that one on the fridge.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
And then afterwards, like, did you enjoy yourself? Did you have a good time? And I'm like, I did.
And then orange slices and a nap, and you're good, right?
Oh God, I love that.
Sage, how about you? Is there anybody that you talk to about what you've got planned for players?
Oh, definitely my partner JB. He's definitely my go-to. He will often be my like my constructive feedback. So like after streams that we play, we'll watch them together and then afterwards discuss like what happened, what could have been done better, what was done really well. And so he's definitely my source of like really great constructive feedback and to also like workshop ideas. It's just extremely helpful.
Amazing. Matt, you seem to be in an interesting situation here with a co-DM on your campaign. Do you and Nat bounce ideas off of each other?
Oh yeah, constantly. It's kind of nice because you have someone that you can like share wild ideas with, but also you're both a part of it together and can riff off it. And we kind of have general outlines even during the game. And if in the spur of the moment, one of us comes up with something that's completely the opposite direction, we just go with it, which is kind of fun. And that kind of ends up being a chaotic support in its own. I also am lucky my boss is a longtime GM. So I can always, it's the same as you. I run into his office. I have this great idea. Can you believe this? I'm on a call. Can I sit down?
I made this
Bouncing
entire
excitedly while
map.
they're on call.
Look at how devious this trap is. Lamau.
I'll write it on this whiteboard and then run out.
Perfect.
Point
Kathleen,
slices and a nap.
Kathleen, how about you? Anybody that you bounce ideas or plans off of?
I definitely consult with my husband. He's great. He's the ultimate, like, he's so good at like logic and like being like, does that work? Like he's like, I've been reading him my book and I'm like, does all this make sense? Does all this motivation work for you? And he's just like, why are they saying that? And I'm like, that's a great question. So I always idiot check things off Graham, but I love running into him and being like, look at this item description. Isn't it stupid? Because I want immediate feedback on my stupid idea.
Sage is the only adult in the room. The rest of us are just like little gremlins just running in with our pieces of paper. Look.
It makes me so deliriously happy to come up to do this, to like be a creative person and to like write things and like design stuff that I'm just like, I just can't, I'm so excited to share it. So I can't resist feedback.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely. So last question before we get to our winners here, our draw winners, is from the Rising Tides once again. Do you have any favorite TTRPG systems other than Dungeons and Dragons? Any that you enjoy playing or running?
The criminally underrated Paranoia.
Oh yes, Paranoia is a good one. That one is rife for dramatic dramatic moments. Yeah.
It's great. I don't know how. I'm going to just quickly summarize it for people who maybe are not familiar with Paranoia. Paranoia is essentially based on like a sort of parody of like British post-apocalyptic ultra bureaucratic society. When I was playing with my GM, he made us sing a song about friend computer that knows all and would always send you the wrong things that you needed for the job. Like, it's very much a system of, well, here's a bunch of random crap that may or may not be helpful. Good luck, friends. Like, it's very creative, and like there's so much room for failure in a way that there isn't in Dungeons and Dragons, because you just get body clones that you can have, and you can have as many as you want based on how important you are or how bad you are at things, and it's really good. And sometimes you end up owing people favors if you run out of clones, and it's rife for like the kind of success at a cost kind of role playing.
Yeah, everybody pointing fingers, mutant, and great moments like that. One of my favorite systems. Michelle.
One of my favorite TTRPG designers is Grant Howitt. Grant Howitt does these amazing one-page RPGs that are so much fun to run. He's done Honey Heist, which I think is one of my favorites because you are a bear. We were talking about this earlier about like how I like to turn into a bear when I'm a druid, but this time you are a bear and you roll for like what kind of bear you are, what's your position on this Ocean's 11 bear heist. So there's a lot of absurdity kind of baked in, and just that the tone is immediately understood. And so you just kind of walk in with your players and have a lot of fun. Another really great one is Himbo Treasure Hunt, where I've just wanted to run that where everyone's just a JoJo character. And I think that would make a lot of sense and also be hilarious. And if I may plug my own, I have written a TTRPG called Our Home is Trash, which is found on itch.io. It is about a group of trash animals on Staten Island who live in the biggest dump in Staten Island. And their home is being repurposed for a bunch of luxury condos, and you have to work together in order to thwart them. And so you can roll. There are different stats for the different animals. You have a pigeon, a rat, a possum, and a raccoon. Each of them have different abilities. And yeah, it's a D6 game, so just rolling 2d6s mostly. But there is also a whole section on the GM, and yeah, and Brie Lundberg is an amazing artist, and they did the pictures. So I hope you enjoy the cuteness. But yeah, if you want to pretend to be a pigeon from Staten Island,
Nice.
I don't know, thwarting capitalism, go for it.
We did say capitalism is always the bad guy. Yeah. Sage, how about you? Any systems that you're a fan of?
Oh my god, so many. So one group of systems that I really love are systems produced by White Wolf Games. So they make Mage the Ascension, Werewolf the Apocalypse, Vampire the Masquerade, and those are great D10 games, like a D10 dot system. And what I really love about those systems is they really delve within the setting of like character creation about the motivations and philosophies of your characters and how they differ, and that really helps build out fully fleshed out characters in a way that feel very real and actualized. I also love Urban Shadows by Powered by the Apocalypse because it's very fast, very lethal, and it's this urban fantasy setting. So you can pull in themes from your own, from your own city, and it's really about the setting more it is about the characters. But it's, how are they trying to make life in a tough urban environment? And then also, if you're in love with the Fallout video games, the Fallout tabletop game is very, very good. Very well constructed. It feels just like the video game, and it is so much fun.
Absolutely. I have stolen the special system for homebrew stuff before, which is great. It translates almost exactly to tabletop from the games, which is awesome. Matt, how about you? Any systems that you're a fan of?
And I have to also echo the Fallout TTRPG because it's great. For me, the two I really love, I love Invisible Sun from Monty Cook Games and Morkborg.
Yeah, Morkborg's a good one too. Everybody's Goblins. That's great.
Quick and Deadly.
Yeah. I personally am a big fan of the Powered by the Apocalypse system and Monster of the Week. is one of my favorites too. Run some good games in that system. Michelle.
Just want to shout out Kids on Brooms / Kids on Bikes. Also fantastic.
Yep.
Really love those. And I don't know, how do people feel about Call of Cthulhu?
I forgot to say Call of Cthulhu.
Yeah, that's the other like big one that people often play. It can get a little brutal for me personally, but I love being a player. I would hate to be a GM for that game.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, if you love a downer ending, then Call of Cthulhu is for you. All right, folks. So we're going to announce our winners for our draws and our prizes tonight. But stick around because we're going to raid this little channel called Loading Ready Run when we're done here in a moment. So to thank everybody here, I want to thank all of our panelists. We'll send it around one more time and give everybody a chance to say who you are and where we can find you. Kathleen, starting with you.
Hello, I'm Kathleen from Loading Ready Run. Go find me at Loading Ready Run. Just type that into Twitch and YouTube, and you'll find my face eventually.
Fantastic. Thank you. Sage, how about yourself?
Hi, yes, hello, I'm Sage. You can find me at Staff of Sage everywhere on the internet, and check out my long-standing 8-year running actual play, Venture Maidens, where you can find us on Twitch, on anywhere you find podcasts, and on YouTube.
Amazing. Matt, let everybody know who you are and where we can find you.
I'm Matt. You can find me everywhere on the internet at Flavor Pro Matt, and also on the Flavor Profiles podcast, which starts back up tomorrow if I can finish editing after this.
Hey, fantastic. And Michelle, let everybody know who you are and where we can find you.
Hi, I'm Michelle Rapp. It's been wonderful to be part of this. I'm so happy to have chatted with everybody here. I'm mostly a content creator. I also do fan art. Sorry, I do a lot of things and I'm very tired. But you can find me on most social media sites as Kiln Fiend Potter or Kiln Fiend Pottery. And Instagram, you can see a lot of my art. And yeah, what was the last part of the question?
Just who you are and where we can find you.
Oh yeah, you can find me there. Don't Google me because you will come up with a bunch of other Michelle Rapps, one of whom is a juggalo.
Oh,
And not
Wow.
interesting. You don't moonlight? No.
No, my maiden name was Michelle Wen, and I'm actually glad that I changed my name because the other Michelle Wens were all like surgeons from Stanford. And I'm like, I can't compete with that. So I'd rather be over here with like more normal folks.
Would you go to the Gathering of the Juggalos with me so we could stage a double Michelle Rapp photo, though? Because I've heard the Gathering of the Juggalos is legitimately a good time.
I mean,
If you
I'd
like
be
Fago,
down.
sure.
I would 100% be down. Meet my doppelganger.
They have something called lake hepatitis, and that's just a scintillating concept.
All right. On that note, folks, our winners for tonight, just as we get rated by Mr. B and crew, thanks everyone. Remember, you can still donate. Command donate. You aren't going to be eligible for the draw, but you can still donate. Our Infinite Tokens prize pack is won by Mishatem. Congratulations, Mishatem. Our dice set is won by NRLSC Sponge. Congratulations. Our DM guide is won by Chardspark. Congratulations, Chardspark. And the GM companion, which includes a bunch of tools for GMs like a screen and other companion tool, is won by Crab Baskets. Congratulations, Crab Baskets.
Hey.
I wanted to thank everyone for coming out today, everybody out in the audience, as well as our amazing panel here today. As always, folks, I've been Chris. I'm your Commander Mechanic. Stick around because we're heading over to Loading Ready Run right now. All right. Take care, everyone. We'll see you next time.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.